It began with an unthinkable horror hidden in plain sight. Months of normal life tainted by something unspeakable. Imagine a day when the water in your home begins to carry a strange, sickening scent. Would you dare to conceive that flowing through those pipes were not just liquids, but the very fragments of a human body? This is a true crime story that began with what seemed like a routine plumbing issue. A strange, putrid odor wafted from the drainage system of an upscale apartment building in Tanghua. Residents, initially confused, simply assumed it was long-accumulated grime or a stubborn blockage. But when the maintenance workers began to dismantle sections of the pipes, they made a horrific discovery. Mangled pieces of human flesh, in an advanced state of decomposition, clogged the system and began to back up into the apartments below. This was no longer just a private family matter. This was a chilling truth that unfolded right in the heart of Tanghua, a city where the perpetrator, after committing murder and disposing of the body, had calmly gone on vacation as if nothing had happened. And be warned, for if one day your household water changes its smell, it might not just be water flowing through those pipes, but a gruesome crime, flushed away meter by meter. May 15, 2024, 6:20 a.m. In the city of Tanghua, an urgent call from the technical team of the upscale Lam King Plaza apartment complex was routed directly to the hotline of the Dongvei Ward Police. The call's content was brief, yet chilling enough to send shivers down the spine of the listener. Wastewater from the vertical pipe on the 15th floor is backing up. There's something in the pipe that looks like meat, but it's definitely not animal flesh. The smell is absolutely horrific. We suspect it's human. Less than 15 minutes later, Captain Min, head of the Serious Crime Investigation Unit, arrived at the scene. Inside the building's technical room, the main drainage pipe running vertically through the structure had been partially disassembled. A pungent, putrid, and metallic stench assaulted the nostrils, forcing the three technical staff to wear 2 layers of masks, yet still feeling nauseous. On the white-tiled floor, a thick, opaque pink liquid stained the surface in long streaks. In one worker's hand was a section of 200mm diameter PVC pipe, freshly cut. Inside, soft, mushy chunks of flesh, mixed with long black hairs and human fat, were thickly caked around the filter screen. The worker's voice trembled. This looks like meat that has been ground, sir. No bones, but the smell is terrible, like a corpse. The building management was immediately instructed to provide a list of all apartments using this shared drainage stack. There were 15 in total, but one apartment immediately drew the attention of the investigators. Apartment 1508. This was the residence of Alex Lay, 35, and his wife, Sarah Trin, 32. For almost 2 weeks, no one in the building had seen any trace of Alex. Meanwhile, his wife, Sarah Trin, continued to come and go every day, even cheerfully posting photos of herself on a luxurious vacation with friends at a resort in Quinyon. No one suspected a thing. No one paid attention to the husband's unusual absence. But now, directly beneath their bathroom floor, the drainage pipe was choked with a horrifying, decomposing mixture, a mixture containing human DNA. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to contact the residents, police decided to force entry into apartment 1508. Inside, an eerie silence prevailed. A yellow light on the kitchen counter was still on, and a half-finished glass of orange juice set on the dining table. In the bathroom, the floor was perfectly dry, the sink spotless, not a single watermark. However, an indescribable stench emanated from the floor drain. Captain Min crouched down, using a small metal rod to gently pry open the drain cover. What was pulled up stunned everyone. A clump of long hair and a soft, grayish-brown piece of skin. Forensic experts on site immediately confirmed it was human tissue. There was no longer any doubt.
Someone had murdered a person, dismembered the victim, and disposed of the remains in the most barbaric way, flushing them little by little through the communal sewage system.
15 floors, over 60 apartments, and everyone in the building had, for days, been living with a horror named the blood pipe. The entire Lamb King Plaza was sealed off. The technical team was ordered to urgently dismantle the complete wastewater pipe system along the 14th, 15th, and 16th floors. Each section of pipe was carefully removed, opened, and all contained the same thing: human flesh, finely ground, mixed with hair and soft tissues, jammed tightly in every filter mesh, every bend, every joint. Some sections even contained a small piece of ear cartilage, a broken toenail, and, more horrifyingly, a fragment of human skull no larger than a thumb tip. Residents began to huddle in the hallways, no one daring to speak loudly. Some, unable to bear it, vomited on the spot. Others were silent, numb with dread, as they recalled how for an entire week the water in their bathrooms had smelled strange, but they had simply dismissed it as an old pipe issue. One woman burst into tears, trembling. "Oh my God, my child brushed their teeth with that water. For days they kept complaining the water smelled weird." Police ordered all residents on the 15th floor to sign a confirmation of their apartment status and temporarily shut off all water taps. But all eyes were now fixed on one place, apartment 1508. Not because of the police presence, but because everyone remembered how long it had been since they had seen Alex, the kind, smiling homeowner. Meanwhile, his wife, Sarah Tren, had continued her routine: fashionable curled hair, elegantly dressed, still smiling and greeting neighbors as if nothing was amiss. One neighbor had once asked her, "Your husband's been away a lot lately. Where is he?" She had simply smiled and replied, "Oh, my husband is on a business trip in Saigon. He's been there for a month." But a man from an upper floor provided a different detail. "I definitely heard a very loud argument from that apartment late on the night of July 29th. After that, there was absolute silence." On May 16th, investigators discovered a large black trash bag discarded stealthily in the technical waste area in the basement. Inside were bath towels stained with dried blood, a few pieces of plastic film with strange viscous substances, and, notably, an extremely strong odor of bleach. When checking the online purchase history for apartment 1508, police uncovered a crucial detail. On July 27th, an order was delivered to the apartment containing 2 bottles of industrial-strength drain cleaner, a 5-liter container of bleach, and a high-power meat grinder.
The recipient who signed for the delivery? Sarah Tren. Alex Lay had vanished without a trace since the night of July 29th. His wife was calmly checking into a resort in Quignon, while pieces of his body were jammed tightly in the drainage system of the entire building. On May 17th, Captain Min requested all security camera data from the basement, elevators, hallways, and entrances/exits of the 15th floor for the period between July 28th and August 1st. Over 30 hours of footage, yet it took the investigation team less than an hour to uncover a disturbing detail. On the night of July 29th at 10:13 p.m., the basement elevator doors opened. Sarah Tren stepped in, pulling a large moss-green suitcase. Her face was masked, her head covered by a cap obscuring most of her features. But what was more striking was the person following right behind her. An unknown man wearing a black jacket about 1.75 meters tall, slender build, carrying a large black trash bag. When the elevator stopped on the 15th floor, both exited and walked directly towards apartment 1508. Approximately 40 minutes later, they reappeared. This time, the man was pulling the suitcase, with Sarah walking closely beside him. When the elevator reached the basement, they separated. Sarah went straight to the main gate while the man turned back and entered a technical area, a blind spot with no surveillance cameras. The investigation team paused the footage, magnified the frame, and used advanced facial recognition software. The result? The unknown man's face did not match any resident in the building. He had no resident pass, no registered visitor entry, and had not appeared in any prior security checks. Yet he had entered the basement. Someone must have helped him open the door. And that person was none other than Sarah Tren. Concurrently, data from the magnetic door lock system of apartment 1508 showed that at 7:40 p.m. on the same day, Sarah had opened the apartment door twice in a row. The second time was precisely when the hallway camera recorded the unknown man entering with her. When the technical team re-examined the floor drain in the bathroom, they discovered that the filter grate had been removed and reattached with different screws, not consistent with other apartments in the building. There were signs of forceful prying, fresh scratches, and beneath the silicone sealant, a faint blood stain had seeped deep into the cement. Police determined the perpetrator did not act alone. There was an accomplice, someone who directly participated in the disposal process, and very likely in the murder itself. Sarah Tren's phone data was urgently retrieved, and among hundreds of deleted messages, a particularly chilling conversation was recovered, sent from an unregistered, anonymous number. "When it's all handled, go relax. No one will suspect anything." Sarah's reply, "I've had enough. Now it's time for me to live for myself." Now, the death of Alex Lee was no longer a case of a wife killing her husband in a fit of rage. This was a meticulously planned operation, with an accomplice, a calculated timeline, specific tools, and a horrifying disposal script, executed down to the last detail. The biggest question now was not who killed, but who helped her grind her husband's body and flush it down the plumbing system of an entire apartment complex. On May 18th, the Criminal Technical Department, in coordination with the PCO2 Serious Crime Unit of Thanh Hoa Provincial Police, completed data retrieval from Sarah Tren's phone. In the discarded data, forensic experts recovered over 400 deleted messages from the past 3 weeks. Among them, 12 conversations with the same unregistered phone number stood out. The messages were scattered but revolved around 3 keywords: handle, clean, and done. One specific message made investigators go silent. "It's narrow there. You have to grind it and flush it bit by bit, clean and no trace. Remember to peel off all the fingernails." This information perfectly matched the reality at the crime scene. The victim's body was not intact. Fingernails and toenails had been removed, and the skin on the fingertips had been cut, eliminating all fingerprints. Every part of the body had been ground so finely that its original structure was unrecognizable. A forensic expert noted that the grinding method, the timing of flushing, and even the water pressure used were all meticulously calculated. The task force tracked the phone number that sent the messages. It was a burner SIM, but GPS data showed it had connected to a cell tower in Quang Thong Ward, Thanh Hoa, exactly 2 hours after Sarah Tren left the apartment building on the night of July 29th. Cross-referencing with traffic camera data, police discovered a black Wave Alpha motorbike with no license plate. The rider, wearing a black jacket, drove directly into a residential area and vanished from surveillance. Following clues from Sarah Tren's bank transaction history, the investigation team discovered a transfer of 15 million Vietnamese dong to an account named Ben Mai, executed at 1:30 a.m. on July 30th, right after the camera recorded her and the unknown man moving the suitcase to the basement. Ben Mai, born in 1986, originally from Hoang Hoa District, had a past conviction for intentional injury and 2 prior offenses related to gambling. He had no stable job, lived a transient life, and was not registered as a temporary resident. Most notably, Ben Mai had been in a romantic relationship with Sarah Tren before she married Alex Lay in 2020. Police traced and identified Ben Mai's most recent residence as a rented room in a small alley on Lay Lai Street. When authorities raided the room, it was empty. But on an old plastic table, a few instant noodle wrappers, cigarette packs, and a miscellaneous notebook remained. On one page, scrawled lines read, "Cut and flush, don't leave eyes, must break joints or machine will jam."
The handwriting was shaky but strong and familiar. A handwriting expert confirmed it matched Ben Mai's signature from his arrest record 4 years prior. Ben Mai was the mysterious man who accompanied Sarah Trin on that fateful night. He didn't just help carry the suitcase, he didn't just direct the cleanup. He was the one who planned and advised on the disposal method. A brutal and cold-blooded individual, acting as if he was all too familiar with such acts. The question now was no longer why Sarah Trin killed her husband, but whether she did it with her own hands or merely watched her lover commit the act. Then together they ground the victim's body to exchange it for a chillingly free vacation. On May 20th, after 2 days of intense pursuit, the Special Task Force received a tip from a motel owner in the Sumsern area. A man matching Ben Mai's description had rented a cheap room 2 days prior. His movements were highly suspicious. He didn't leave the room during the day, only sneaking out at midnight. At 7 p.m. on the same day, police stormed in and apprehended Ben Mai as he was preparing to pack his belongings and flee.
In the interrogation room, Ben Mai initially remained silent, head bowed. But when the investigators placed photos of the body parts found in the pipes on the table, when he heard a recording of his own voice extracted from Sarah Trin's phone, he let out a hoarse laugh and said, "I didn't kill him. I only helped Sarah grind him. She couldn't lift that body by herself." The interrogator pressed, "So who ground it?" Ben Mai replied, his voice chillingly calm, "Sarah. She stood on a chair, turned on the switch herself, pushed each piece down herself." To prove his statement, Ben Mai revealed the location of his old phone. On it, police found a video, nearly 3 minutes long, showing Sarah Trin standing in the kitchen, wearing a disposable rain poncho and rubber gloves, calmly feeding pieces of her husband's body into the mouth of the industrial meat grinder. He had stood there silently recording the entire process, without a single word of intervention, not a blink, not a moment of hesitation. He didn't just help, he was a spectator, one who enjoyed the crime. What seemed like a crime of passion now revealed an even more repulsive truth. This was a collaboration between 2 individuals who had completely lost their humanity. One who killed, one who ground the body. Both were silent, calm, calculating, and then vanished into the crowd as if they had done nothing wrong. When the investigator asked the final question, "Why did you agree to help her do something so horrific?" Ben Mai looked up, his eyes meeting theirs, radiating a cold hatred. "Because I hated that guy with a passion, and because I still loved Sarah." On May 21st, in a special interrogation room, Sarah Trin sat across from the investigators. She was no longer silent. She began to recount the entire sequence of events, every word like a knife cutting into the truth. On the evening of July 29th, Alex Lay came home late from work, appearing irritable. Dinner proceeded in silence. Sarah quietly poured water, adding a few drops of colorless, odorless liquid sleeping medicine into her husband's orange juice. It was the kind of drug she had purchased from a social media group online. Approximately 15 minutes later, Alex Lay slumped forward onto the table. She checked his pulse. It was still beating, but very weakly. She did not call for an ambulance. She did not panic. She calmly took a large plastic bag, covered her husband's head, and tightened it until he stopped breathing. Then she called Ben Mai. "It's done. Come over." Ben Mai arrived with a bag of tools including knives, scissors, tape, a plastic tarp, and the meat grinder she had ordered. For over an hour in the kitchen of apartment 1508, they worked in absolute silence, cutting, grinding, packaging, and flushing each part down the sink and toilet. Sarah recounted, her voice devoid of emotion. "I had to cut it small because his wrist was too thick. It wouldn't fit in the pipe. Every time the machine ground, it was so loud, I had to turn on the faucet full blast so the neighbors wouldn't hear." When asked if she ever thought of stopping, Sarah replied, "I did think about it, but if I stopped, I would have to live with him. and I had already died inside a long time ago. The reason for killing her husband, Sarah confessed, was not physical abuse nor infidelity, but because he suffocated my life. She claimed Alex's death was a release for both of them, and disposing of the body this way was the cleanest, fastest, and would not leave pain for his family. The investigator asked, "Did you know that this entire building lived with a water pipe containing your husband's remains?" Sarah replied, her voice cold, "I used very strong drain cleaner before going on vacation. I thought no one would find out." At the end of the interrogation, Sarah Trin bowed her head, shedding tears for the first time. But it was not out of remorse. She cried and said, "I didn't realize that grinder would jam so quickly. If it hadn't, perhaps no one would have known about this." After weeks of deliberation, the court's final ruling left the room heavy with silence. On November 28, 2024, the Thanh Hoa Provincial People's Court opened the first instance trial against the accused, Sarah Trin and Ben Mai. The courtroom was packed. Nearly 100 residents of Lam King Plaza were present, not out of curiosity, but because they wanted to witness justice being served, to hear the words death sentence with their own ears. Sarah Trin entered the courtroom in a gray shirt, her face expressionless, not a single tear shed. When asked if she pleaded guilty, she simply replied, "I do not deny it." Ben Mai, on the other hand, kept his head down throughout the trial, not daring to look at anyone, only nodding slightly when his name was called. As the judicial panel read the 43-page indictment, detailing how the victim, Alex Lay, was poisoned, strangled to death, dismembered, finely ground, and disposed of through each section of the drainage pipes, the entire courtroom almost held its breath. Some had to cover their mouths to suppress sobs. Others quietly turned away. But the eyes of Alex Lay's mother, a woman with snow-white hair, clutching her son's photo, remained fixed on the defendants, unwavering. The defense counsel requested a lighter sentence for Sarah Trin, citing prolonged emotional abuse. However, the court rejected this. Not a single act in this case showed a loss of control or impulse. Everything, from purchasing the poison and the grinder to the disposal, was calculated in a detailed, cold-blooded, and inhumane manner. The final verdict was then delivered. Death sentence for Ben Mai for the crime of murder. Life imprisonment for Sarah Trin for the crime of murder. 5 years imprisonment for desecration of a corpse for both. Order to pay 250 million Vietnamese dong in civil compensation to the victim's family, jointly by both defendants. Apartment 1508 was sealed permanently. No one wanted to step foot in it again. Many families in the apartment complex have moved out and have not dared to return. Some recounted that every time they flushed the toilet in their homes, they still sensed the lingering metallic smell of blood. Another person said, "Every time I hear the water swirling in the toilet, I am haunted by the sound of the meat grinder." Alex Lay's body, not intact, could not be given a complete funeral. His family could only set up a simple altar for him. On the photo frame was a man with a gentle smile. No one could have imagined that he would die so tragically at the hands of the wife who once shared his bed. The sentence was delivered, but the pain and the haunting have no end date. Because there are deaths that cannot be named, crimes that cannot just be called murder, but grinding, flushing, washing away. Right in the very place we consider safest. A single flush can wash away a life, but never the horrifying memory of those who remain. A wife, a meat grinder, and a minute-by-minute plan. But one thing they didn't account for. The truth cannot be washed away, and a crime can never be flushed clean. This story is not just about a corpse. It is about how people can stand firm, smile, check in for vacation, live as if nothing happened, after just having cut into pieces someone who was once their everything. Cherish and value each other while you still can.
because some deaths do not come from swords or knives, but from the cruelty of someone who once promised to walk with you until the end of life. May Alex Lay's story not fade into silence, and may we learn to hear before it's too late. For sometimes the quietest cries are the ones we need to hear the most. In the end, it was not the brutality of the act alone that shocked the nation, but how easily signs of fear and danger were overlooked by neighbors, by police, by society at large.